Hi everybody, welcome back. We're so happy to have you. Miss Marty has a wonderful story to tell you today. So if you're ready, come on in. Hi everybody, welcome back. I have a great story to tell you today. Remember, we have a few things to do before we can start. Miss Becky and I have already lit the Christ candle, and I'm going to light the little Christ candle that we have in our boxes. That will help us to remember that this is a sacred place. Now I'm going to ask Miss Becky to come and change the calendar. Hi, Miss Becky.
Hi, Miss Marty. All right, so this was Easter Sunday. This is the second Sunday in Easter, and we're moving to the third Sunday in Easter. Now we're all set for Miss Marty's story.
Thank you. Okay, if we're ready, today we're going to talk about Jesus and the 12. So when Jesus went to Jerusalem for the last time, he went with his closest followers, his disciples. And on the last week that they were there, on Thursday, they all went together and had a meal, a special meal. And Jesus told them that time that whenever they gathered and had bread and wine, that he would always be with them, just like when we're in church and we have bread and wine. He's always with us. But then he told them something that was so shocking to them. He told them that somebody was going to betray him that night. They were so upset. They were asking each other, "Is it I? Who could it be? What do you think?" Well, later on that night, they found out that it was Judas. Judas got 30 pieces of silver from the soldiers and the guards to tell them where Jesus was going to be later so that they could arrest him. So that was not very good. Now, as Jesus' disciples went out into the world and they were telling his story, they became the apostles. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The church has helped us. And every apostle has their own story and their own symbol. So we are going to talk about why that's important and what the story is for each apostle. We have this wonderful painting by Leonardo da Vinci of the Last Supper, and it's going to help us today. So these are all the shields for the apostles. Okay. So let's look at the picture. We have Jesus in the middle, and then we have all his disciples on either side. So let's see who we have first. Let's see who we have. This is John. He's probably the one who we call the beloved disciple. John first learned about Jesus when he was with John the Baptist. Right away, he told his brother James, and they both began to follow Jesus. Both brothers were fishermen, and their father's name was Zebedee. John is probably the one who wrote down the story of Jesus that we call the Gospel of John. Here we have the symbol for John. Let's see where our symbol for John is. Here it is. It's a cup with a snake, and that helps us remember that one time there were people that put poison in his cup, but the snake came and drank it. The snake died to save John's life. Stories about John tell us that he was the only apostle that was not killed. He lived on an island until he was an old man, full of years. And this is Peter. He's leaning towards Jesus behind Judas. Peter was often angry. He looks angry right in the picture, I think. But he became more peaceful as the years went by. Peter heard about Jesus from his brother Andrew, who was with John the who was with John the Baptist. Peter's symbol has an upside down cross and 2 keys. One time Jesus said to Peter that he was the rock on which he would build the church, and he gave him the keys to the kingdom. When Peter was old, he went to be with the Christian people in Rome. It was against the law to be with the Christian people, and the soldiers caught Peter, and they were going to hang him on a cross like Jesus. And Peter asked them to turn him upside down. He did not deserve to die like his Lord, he said. So the soldiers did as he asked, and they turned him upside down. Here we have Judas. Look, you can see he's holding the bag with the 30 pieces of silver in it. I wonder what the best symbol for Judas would be. Sometimes the sign for Judas is a shield that is all black, but I wonder if there really was no light in his life after all, or at all. Sometimes the sign for Judas has 30 pieces of silver or a rope because Judas hung himself after he realized what he had done. Judas may have lost hope for himself, but I wonder if Jesus forgave him. I think we probably should just leave his symbol blank. The next one is Matthias. And Matthias is who replaced Judas as one of the 12. But he was killed for telling his story. And his symbol has a sword and a book on it. Now let's go to the other side of the table. We have Thomas and James and Philip. First one we see is Thomas. He's the one who asked a lot of hard questions. His symbol has a spear and a builder's cross, or builder's square. This is what a builder uses to make square corners on buildings. Thomas went to India to tell the people the story of Jesus. So he began to build a church in that part of the world, and he was killed in India for telling the story. In the middle, we have James. James is really sitting next to Jesus. Just like John is sitting next to Jesus, James is close to Jesus. The 2 brothers, together with Peter, made up the inner circle. The 3 of them were very close to Jesus. The 3 of them went with Jesus when he was praying on the mountain. When he was praying in the garden too, they were with him. But they fell asleep 3 times. So James' shield has 3 shells on it. He was the first apostle to be killed. Philip is right here. He's the next one. He was there when Jesus fed the 5,000 people. They were hungry for the truth about life. The truth is that people need each other and they need to love each other. To show this, Jesus shared a little bread and fish with them, and there was enough for everyone. This was kind of like a parable. So the sign for Philip has a cross and 2 loaves of bread to help us remember that so many were fed. Now let's go back to the other side, way at the end of the table. We have another group of 3 people. We have Andrew, James the Less, and Bartholomew. First one is Andrew. We already know that he's Peter's brother. Andrew was one of John the Baptist's disciples, and both he and Peter followed Jesus. They were both fishermen. Many centuries ago, the people in Scotland fell in love with Andrew, so much that they made him the patron saint of Scotland. If you go there, you can still see the sign on their flag. It's a cross that looks like an X. Andrew died on the cross that was this shape. The next one we have is James the Less. People called him the Less because he was younger and shorter than John's brother James. James the Less's sign is a saw. He was killed for telling the stories of Jesus too. Kings didn't want to hear about a king that they called Jesus, even though Jesus was a different kind of king. And finally, at the end of that table, we have Bartholomew. His name means the son of Ptolemy. He was told about Jesus by Philip. And Bartholomew's sign has knives on it because he was killed for telling the story of Jesus to people that didn't understand. Okay, let's go back to the other end of the table for the other group. We have 3 more people. We have Matthew, and Jude, and Simon, the Zealot. Matthew's the first one we see. He was a tax collector until Jesus called him. Matthew followed Jesus and later wrote down the story of Jesus that we call the Gospel of Matthew. It's the first book in the New Testament. Matthew's symbol has 3 bags of money on it to help us remember that he was a hated tax collector before Jesus called him and Matthew found peace. Next, we have Jude. His name almost sounds like Judas, doesn't it? He may have written one of the last books in the New Testament, which is a letter by Jude. His shield has a ship sailing because he went across the sea to tell the story of Jesus. The last one we have is Simon. He was a fighter for his people and for God's law, so he was called the Zealot. He was also a fisherman. Simon's symbol has a fish and a book. And the fish helps us remember that he was a fisherman who became someone who fished for people to show them the truth about life. And the book stands for the Bible. So here are the 12 apostles, and here are the 12 apostles' shields. I wonder which one you think is the most important. I wonder which apostle you like the best. I wonder if there's an apostle that's just like you. I think that we could go get our bags that Miss Becky and I brought right before Easter. And if you look in those bags, you're going to find some fun supplies to help you make something that will help you remember Jesus' apostles. And after you do that, you can have a feast and thank Jesus for everything you have. End by saying amen. I'll see you next week. Bye.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.